The British Foreign Secretary has warned Russia of severe consequences if it attacks Ukraine. Liz Truss made the remarks before welcoming G7 counterparts to a weekend-long meeting in the English port city of Liverpool. Truss hopes the group of the world's richest democracies can show a united front against Russia as the country appears to be massing troops along Ukraine's border. Russia denies it plans to attack. Here's more of what Truss had to say.
If Russia were to take that action, it would be a strategic mistake and there would be severe consequences for Russia. And what we're doing this weekend is working with like-minded allies to spell that out.
So for more on this, I'm joined by DW's Chief International Editor, Richard Walker. Richard, welcome. The British Foreign Secretary essentially firing a verbal warning shot at Russia there. What exactly is the situation like at the Russia-Ukraine border, and just how worried should we be?
Yeah, well, obviously we've been reporting about this over the last couple of months. The build-up of perhaps north of 100,000 troops or so, according to Western intelligence estimates, in the border regions in Russia, but close to the Ukrainian border. And without really a plausible explanation from the Russian side of what these troops are doing. And this is coupled with threatening rhetoric coming from the Russian side, the kind of rhetoric that appears like it might be designed to justify a possible military intervention if it does come to that. And then, of course, there's the fact that this has happened before. We're not talking about something that would be completely unheard of. Vladimir Putin has had a track record, not just in Ukraine, but also, for example, with a view to Georgia, another former Soviet republic. So this very much has the West's attention, as we see at this G7 foreign ministers meeting here, where they're trying to establish a kind of credible deterrence towards Russia. And also, during the course of the week, Joe Biden, the US president, held a video call with Vladimir Putin, his Russian counterpart, also to try and spell out the Western position.
Now, short of actual armed conflict, what diplomatic tools does the West have in its arsenal to counter Russia?
Yeah, so we do have to stress that at the beginning, Ukraine's not, say, a NATO member state where the West would be bound by treaty obligations to intervene militarily. But in that call, for example, between Joe Biden and Vladimir Putin, Biden essentially used sort of 3 sticks and 1 carrot. So the sticks were, as his national security advisor spoke afterward, first of all, to respond with very strong economic sanctions. Now, there are long-standing sanctions against Russia anyway from past actions against Crimea, for instance, the annexation of Crimea, but part of Ukraine. But there are escalations that the West could apply. For instance, really going for sanctions within the financial system, or something that would be a kind of a sanctions nuclear option, which would be blocking Russian access to the SWIFT payment system. This is the kind of thing that's been used, for example, against North Korea in the past. That would have very, very huge implications for the Russian economy. Then the other sticks were providing additional defense material to the Ukrainians, so not actually sending in troops, but providing them with more weapons, potentially, and then fortifying the NATO countries in the region. And 1 carrot, offering to the Russians to have talks about their kind of bigger overall concerns strategically in the region. The sense that Russia often talks about feeling that the West, NATO, for example, is constantly trying to encroach towards their borders. So Biden offered the carrot of talks on that.
OK. Now, this is, of course, the first G7 meeting for Germany's new foreign minister, Annalena Baerbock of the environmentalist Green Party. And she and Germany are going to be facing a lot of pressure from other G7 leaders to abandon the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline over fears that that's going to increase reliance on Russian gas. Is there a scenario under which you see this actually happening?
Yeah, well, it's interesting, isn't it? So Nord Stream 2, if it was up to Annalena Baerbock and her Green Party, that pipeline wouldn't be going ahead anyway. They've opposed it for a long time. But this is a coalition government that's come in here in Germany, and the Social Democrats who are in charge, the Chancellor Olaf Scholz, they've broadly been more supportive. But still, a Russian invasion of Ukraine would make it really kind of stretch that commitment to Nord Stream 2 to breaking limit. And also, earlier in the year, the US and Germany agreed a deal between the two sides that meant that the US agreed to not apply sanctions to German firms involved in Nord Stream 2, under which the Germans committed to this: if Russia attempted to use energy as a weapon or committed further aggressive acts against Ukraine, Germany will take action to limit Russian export capabilities to Europe in the energy sector, including gas. Doesn't name NS2 specifically, Nord Stream 2, but that's as close as you could get to actually a commitment to take some action like this.
Richard Walker, DW's Chief International Editor, thanks so much for joining me with that update in the studio.
And meanwhile, Germany's new Chancellor Olaf Scholz has had his first call with US President Joe Biden since taking office. They discussed those tensions on the Russia-Ukraine border. Earlier, Scholz was in Brussels for talks with European Union and NATO leaders, where again, Russia's troop buildup was high on the agenda. Scholz said he wants to revive negotiations with Russia to de-escalate tensions and avoid a military conflict.
Olaf Scholz began his day in Paris with a business lunch with French President Emmanuel Macron. A quick bonjour in front of the Élysée Palace, then off to discuss Franco-German relations and challenges facing the EU. The new German Chancellor said he was optimistic about future cooperation between Europe's two biggest economies.
From my point of view, there are now also good starting points for what needs to be done next. They include Germany's G7 presidency, as well as France's EU Council presidency. The challenge is to ensure that we can make great progress in all these areas. I'm sure that we will succeed, and this was a first visit on which we can strengthen our cooperation and ties.
A pressing issue on the agenda: growing tensions at the Russian-Ukrainian border. The two leaders showed a united front.
Our ultimate goal is to prevent all unnecessary tension. The common will of Europeans and Americans is to show that we are very vigilant and that there is no further escalation.
Next stop for Scholz, the heart of the EU itself. In Brussels, he met European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen and used the chance to stress the role of Germany in the EU.
Germany is a European nation. We are a large country at the heart of the European Union. We have a large population, a large economy. And that is why German politics cannot stand at the side and simply comment on what's going on. It has to take a role of responsibility.
Relations with Russia, EU cooperation on the pandemic response, and a joint effort to tackle climate change were some of the topics discussed at the Commission's headquarters. Later, Scholz also met with European Council President Charles Michel. Michel sets the agenda of the Council of EU leaders, which is due to convene next week. It will be the first such gathering for Scholz as German Chancellor. He ended his marathon day with a last meeting with NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg. Again, Russia's troop buildup on the Ukrainian border took center stage. Scholz made clear a Russian incursion into Ukrainian territory would be unacceptable.
DW's Brussels Bureau Chief Alexandra von Namen has been following the Chancellor during his first trip to Brussels, and she sent us this assessment.
Chancellor Olaf Scholz used his inaugural trip to Paris and Brussels to emphasize that his government stands for continuity concerning Germany's foreign policy. He also made clear that he is eager to work closely together with partners and EU institutions to strengthen the European Union and its role on the international stage. And that message went down well in Paris and in Brussels. Scholz is well known in European capitals as Merkel's former vice-chancellor and finance minister. And he knows exactly how the European Union works, which gives him a flying start here in Brussels. However, the honeymoon will soon be over, and Scholz will be facing a number of international challenges, including tensions with Russia and fears that Moscow could be planning another incursion into Ukraine. The German Chancellor warned Russia that massing troops on Ukraine's border was unacceptable and that any aggression would have serious consequences. However, he dodged questions whether, in that case, Germany would be willing to hold the controversial Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline. There might be some tough choices ahead for the new German Chancellor.